Thank you very much. A warm welcome to those attending and to also to our viewers watching the Live Council YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. This is a meeting of the Audit Committee. My name is not John Chesshire, my name is Henry Higgins, and I am the chair of this meeting. Details of business to be considered today is shown on the agenda, copies of which are accessible on YouTube underneath the live broadcast. Housekeeping, we're not expecting a fire drill, so if one goes off, please follow officers out of the room. Before we start the meeting, can you please switch off your mobile phones or put them to silent, and those with computers, can you put them on silent? Residents' feedback forms, for those who are watching via YouTube and are so minded, you can complete one of the residents' feedback forms. These can be found in the information section underneath the YouTube video. These forms are intended to help us improve the way we run our meetings. I will now move to the attendees. I'll start from my left. If you'd like to introduce yourself and going round.
Anisha Teji, Democratic Services.
I'm Tony Zayman, Chief Executive of the Council.
Dan Kennedy, Corporate Director, Resident Services.
Julie Kelly, Corporate Director, Children's Services.
Sandra Taylor, Corporate Director, Adult Services and Health.
Alex Brown, Head of Counter Fraud.
Claire Baker, Head of Internal Audit and Risk Assurance.
Andrew McLeod, Chief Accountant.
Pete Carpenter, Interim 151 Officer.
Matt Davis, Director of Strategic and Operational Finance.
Councillor Stuart Mathers, Leader of the Labour Group.
Councillor Daniel Singham.
Councillor Adam Huddle.
Councillor John Riley.
Thank you very much, everybody. We'll go to the agenda. Apologies for absence.
We haven't received any apologies.
Does Councillor Mathers have anything about where Tony is? Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest, anything coming for us? No? Okay. Confirm that all items are marked Part 1 and will be considered in public, and there are no Part 2. Okay. Minutes of the last meeting held on the 9th of June. Are we agreeing on those? Agreed. Thank you very much. So we start off with the favourite. It's nice to have something good news to start off with. Alex, would you like to, item 5, Counter Fraud Annual Report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the Counter Fraud Annual Report for 25-26 starts on page 7 of your packs. The team achieved £12.7 million of financial benefit for the Council, mainly across revenues, housing and social care during 25-26. The breakdown of that is in housing, which is one of our biggest risk areas. The team has recovered 113 council properties, which is a notional saving of about £7.9 million. In terms of what that means in loss prevention savings to the budget, that equates to about £3 million. We've also closed 36 emergency accommodation units for people that have applied as homeless and are not staying in the accommodation provided, which has saved around £967,000. In social care, we've improved our outcomes from the previous year by 47%. This is mainly due to our piloted work in adult social care debt recovery. In revenues, we've had a slight drop in the number of inspections due to carrying a vacancy, but in the last quarter, our outcomes have increased by 71%, and we've identified for our revenues maximisation work businesses not paying rates, and they've been billed circa 2.4 million. On page 11, you will also see a breakdown in allocated resources, and you'll notice that actually our team has spent more time data matching. It's actually doubled from the year before, which is really good news. It's all about early detection and using data to inform our investigative work, and it has actually had a direct correlation to the improvement across our revenue discount exemption work. Last thing I'll say on, obviously from 25-26 is this year we received another award in the Public Sector Counter Fraud Awards, and that was for our work from the previous year. It's mainly due to our multidisciplined approach, our focus on data and detection, and our high levels of outcome. And that's for our previous year, and that's for the Local Excellence Award. So what does 26-27 look like? More of the same. We need to sustain our performance, as I say, every single year, and we need to deliver our work plan. We're about to relaunch our fraud awareness campaign as well to help increase referrals internally and externally. And on top of that, we need to continue to support our colleagues as we work through and get more involved in debt recovery. That's all I was going to say. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. I'll start off, and you all have 3. You don't have to use them all. Yes, you've all had 3. Obviously, remember there is a football match later on, so maybe you don't want to use all your 3, but I'm going to use my 2. Given that the service recovery is well over its target and clearly plays for itself, what is the business case for expanding its capacity further, and what would that cost against a potential recovery? And the reason this will be a theme going through the whole thing, considering that the report states that we're 1.6 million is our children's services, 6.5 million is our social care, and 8.3, and these are the reasons that we're in the situation we're in. So, are you looking at those areas to improve?
Yeah, I think from a resourcing perspective, I think we're quite happy with the size of the service and what it's achieving. In terms of where we focus it is very much in high risk areas, and that's where we are now, where the low risk activity is started to be returned to the services, so that we're spending our time on high value areas of work. I think we're in most of the places. I think we can still do more. I think particularly in Sanders World, I think we can still do more around commission care and direct payments. So I think we've only sort of scratched the surface in that. But you'll see it's in our work plan. It's embedded to do more in that area. And again, that's more around data matching. In terms of housing, I think we're fully covered. I think we're in a really good position. And actually this year, you would have seen in earlier reports that the low-level activity went back to the service in terms of housing verifications, which freed us up to spend more time on the more complex matters, such as subletting, etc. So I'm quite comfortable where we are. I don't know if any...
I think maybe I shouldn't really ask that question. I should ask it to the big people that are above your pay grade, I think, is the question here really is, because we have to be looking at areas, Tony and Peter, where we need to recover more money, and maybe it's worth thinking to invest more money in that particular section with more staff to actually deliver a better return. Peter?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point, Chair. What we're doing across the council, and Alex has started this with Phil Hedges, the head of the transactional finance team, so he deals with revenues and collections, is looking at a more rounded way of collecting debt, because we don't link one thing to another at the moment. So we could be giving services to someone who's paying in one area but not paying in another. And so a real big drive this year, and what Alex has started, is to try and look at it across everything, because actually it's all the same in one way, and actually can we ask questions, can we change our processes to say, in customer services as an example, I'm asking for this, oh yeah, that's fine, but we noticed that you still owe us this over here, can you do this first? You know, and those sort of questions need to be raised. So it is, and again, I think Alex and the work he's doing at the moment is pretty leading on that in the sector as a whole. And as it goes forward, we get far more tight. The other big issue is, of course, let's not have any debt to start with. Let's try and get people to pay up front. You know, that's, you know, the big thing as well.
I've got another question, but does anybody else have a question? Yeah. Oh, you want to? No, okay, Tony. What is the current estimated backlog of unidentified tenancy fraud, and what specific steps will be bringing detection speed up so genuine homeless families are getting access to the housing sooner?
That's a really good question.
Only the best for you.
It's a bit of an unknown quantity. It's very difficult to quantify what we don't know, essentially. However, there are steps we're taking. So the first one is actually in Dan's world. So the neighbourhoods team have gone through a restructure. They've doubled the amount of people that are on the front line. That is really, really positive. We went through fraud awareness training with them last week. So in essence, the council now has double the eyes and ears out in the community. So we should see more referrals. So we should get a spike. And then once we know what we know, we should hopefully start to see a dip, and you know the risk start to be mitigated in this world. But it is really difficult to quantify what we don't know. But that's one of the steps that is being taken at the moment.
Any other questions? Councillor Riley.
I've been sort of studying the picture around debt and fraud for a long time. And it's pretty obvious that it's not quite the same as in the commercial sector. We're not always dealing with what you might call commercial debt as opposed to social debt or social positioning debt. And so individuals who have amassed a degree of debt across different aspects of the council is very different from people that we trade with or deal with who just don't pay us. So I think we need to be much clearer about creating debt sectors, inbound debt sectors, some of which we cannot treat like normal commercial debt because it would be fundamentally wrong and probably not terribly productive to do so, but others where we can. And if we can fill it out, the ones that are not social but are and can be treated more commercially, then those I do think we've really got to start looking. I know local authorities are a bit wary of this, but of selling the debt so that we recover something. So to what extent are we able to divide debt up into categories, and then to what extent are we able to be much quicker off the mark? Because in the commercial world, if you get to a certain point, you just factor it.
So, a little outside of the scope of the annual report, but I understand members are interested in the debt stuff. So, the question behind that is, we have already started thinking, and we've already taken CMT through the principles, is we are treating can't pay and won't pay very differently. They are two different things. As part of the group, and what we're doing is it's about more robust processes, it's slicker processes, it's about the timeliness of chasing people that owe us. And ultimately, at the end, if it's a won't pay, it's the action that the authority will take, whether it's enforcement, legal action, etc. So we're kind of working on that and all the space at the moment. In terms of having the data behind the areas, there's a lot of work going on at the moment with business intelligence to provide the 151 and the top table with Power BI dashboards to understand the positioning across the piece. But a lot of this work is ongoing. We're just getting into the weeds of it. Like I said before, we've kind of got more of an action plan behind it now, and we have a set of principles that we're adhering to as we go forward. But there's quite a lot to do between us all, so there is a bit of time to do that. But that's kind of where we are at the moment.
All right, number two.
Yes. Yeah. No. I mean, I think we're safe with this one. I will wait for the next bit of the. We're having connections problems, but you carry on with Alex, and then John, next question. Okay, go.
Anybody else want to chip in on what I just asked about debt? No. Okay. Well, the other one is really to acknowledge what a good job the full team do. We in another guise we had the full team before us in another committee, and the reports back in terms of what they were doing and how they were doing it was extremely good. So congratulations on that. But one specific area, subletting of either domestic or indeed commercial properties. How do we know if somebody is subletting? I mean, is there a method of bells ringing or alarms going off when that sort of thing happens?
So we receive a lot of referrals from the public. Is one way. We are very proactive ourselves, so we use a lot of data for early detection. And also, as I explained before, we have the neighbourhood team that's out and about in the community and informing us of what they see. There are indicators, things that people can look out for, and that's actually going to be part of our fraud awareness package going forward, so we can educate staff as well as residents what to look out for moving forward. It's in terms of how we detect it, I don't really want to give too much away in a public meeting of the things we do and what we're legally allowed to do, but we have lots of different tools, we have lots of different lines of inquiries. Like I said, we have different data matching, we're very proactive about projects and going out and visiting, and all of that kind of brings it all together in terms of what we know about subletting.
I mean, do we sort of, is there I mean, maybe there's too many properties, but is there a sort of checking system,
yes.
a rotational check?
So again, without speaking on Dan's behalf, in the neighbourhoods team, they have a programme of residency checks of what they get through within a period of time, and if there's something untoward, they feed through to our service. We also, based on the data of where the risks are, we are proactive and we go door knocking at night or early in the morning, or we use data to tell us if we think that someone's not in a property.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Yes, Adam. Remember, it's about Alex's area. Yeah.
Focusing on chart 5, just to make my question a bit easier and focused. property recovery has been increasing each quarter, but is that because we are getting better at identifying fraud, or is fraud cases increasing? But it could be any type of fraud. I just focus on housing to make it.
That's a good question. So in terms of, obviously you've seen in the report, we've actually had a little bit of a decrease in referrals, but our work's pretty stagnant in terms of the numbers. We sit round the 130 mark in terms of investigations. That's kind of where it's been since post-COVID. We're still there now. In terms of the recovery can be, it's quite difficult to try and look at what it will be by quarter, because it depends on, during interview, that actually the person that's being interviewed may wish to just give it up there and then. We may have to go to court, and now the courts at the moment, whether it's criminal or civil, it's quite a challenging environment in terms of when you get a date, when the trial might happen, etc. But no, I wouldn't say fraud is increasing. I think it's more the fact of, the world's had challenges now consistently since 2008, and I think that's played quite a factor in terms of fraud. But I wouldn't say it's increasing. I just think over the journey we've been over the last 6-7 years, we're in a really good place in terms of detection and what's coming through, and you can see that by the stability of the results.
You all right? You on?
Just one quick one from me, Chair, if that's all right. Just a really quick one on inspections. I think it was on table 2, revenue inspections performance. It looks like it's down 15%, if that's correct. Is there a particular reason for that?
Yeah, so unfortunately we had a vacancy. That vacancy's now been filled. So what I would say is, even though the volume of inspections dropped, our outcomes increased from the previous year. So, but now we are, as of, I think it's going to be in 3 weeks' time, we are fully resourced in that area.
Thank you very much. And because I'm going to be very generous, you can go. Yeah, can we just check? Obviously, we've got some feeds coming in. Can you guys hear us or not? A wave or a hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, great. So we can assure you that you're not robots. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll get on to the next one then. Item 6. External update, audit update process for auditing 25-26 accounts, main account and pension fund accounts. Is that Peter? Is that you?
Thank you, Chair. I'll introduce this, and I'm sure Mark Rutter from EY will then add to me. These are the 2 planning reports for the 25-6 audit of the accounts for both the council and the pension fund. I think the interesting thing to note is there's a total of 227 disclaimed audit opinions at the moment, issued by auditors across councils. This is roughly 49.3% of all audits in England at the moment, so half of councils have disclaimer opinions. The purpose of the planning reports is to provide the committee with a basis to review the proposed audit approaches for the 25-6 audit in accordance with regulations. Key items to highlight are the said strategy for recovery of disclaimed audit opinions and rebuild assurance, which is really important for us now that we have 3 disclaimer opinions. They'll look at the key risks. They'll then also look at the value for money assessments and the delivery of the 24/5 and previous years' recommendations, including the Section 24 recommendations we got last July. The council at the moment was one of 7 councils that didn't deliver 24/5 draft accounts on time. We're now one of 2 in Outer London and 1 in Inner London that haven't delivered. We're having some issues with the reconciliation of our housing properties, and obviously as a 151 officer I can't allow the accounts to go if I'm not happy with them. So we think we've still got probably about another 2 weeks to actually get those accounts completed. In terms of things, the housing problems were actually hopefully rectified today. It's not ideal, but the accounts have got to be right, and that's the important thing. A couple of major things. The audit, with all the things going on over the past few years, the audit is expected to be completed in mid-November. We have an audit committee at the end of November, where the draft external auditors 25-26 report is due. That's a statutory requirement. The auditors are also looking to start on site about the 4th of August in terms of their work at the moment, in terms of plans. In terms of a pension fund, we have actually provided the pension fund accounts, but because the accounts for pension funds and councils are combined in unitaries. Obviously, they've not gone out for public inspection yet, but will do. Unlike the council accounts, the pension fund has had clean audits for the last, have clean audits. That's all I wanted to say. Obviously, a lot of work's going to go on. There's a lot of improvement around here, which links to the financial modernisation programme, but we've still got a lot of work to do.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Obviously, we meant to have this last time, so I've still got a couple of questions the last time, a couple of add-on. So, does Mark want to say something first, and then we go to the questions? Yes,
thank you, Chair. Just a couple of key highlights to pull out from the report, but before I do that, I would just like to introduce my colleague, Chloe, who's on the call. The committee has seen myself and Stephen Reid, the signing partner for the council audit before. Chloe has joined the council audit team for this year as another partner, but will also be the lead partner for our audit pension fund for this year. So you'll probably see Chloe at the committee going forward as well. In terms of the report, the main thing I just want to highlight is that piece around the rebuilding of assurance and the timetable for that. As we previously reported through the committee, the LARIG guidance that was published by the National Audit Office set out an indicative timetable for rebuilding assurance in local government after the disclaimers up to 22-23. Due to the difficulties we've encountered in executing our audit procedures through 23-24 and 24-25 at Hillingdon is about 2 years behind that schedule at present. Therefore, there are real risks to the rebuilding of assurance going through. That said, Pete highlighted some delays in the publication of the accounts for this year. We did anticipate that could happen, and we have got our audit scheduled to commence from mid to late August, so that shouldn't in and of itself cause us any delays or impact our ability to complete our procedures for this year. Obviously, we will need to keep an eye on how that audit progresses as we get into the detailed field work and hopefully avoid some of the difficulties encountered in previous. So, just think it's really key for the committee to understand where the council is on that rebuilding journey, being behind the indicative timetable. In terms of our audit risks, we have the fairly standard risks that we recognise across most of our local government bodies. There's nothing in particular I'd want to pull out in there. Within the valuations of PPE, what I would, however, highlight is the council has helpfully adopted an approach of valuing 100% of its portfolio this year. So there was a change in the requirements of the reporting framework for this year, which means that valuations which used to be done annually but on a rolling basis, and the council's approach was to do about 80% of the portfolio every year and rotate the other 20% over a 5-year period, now needs to be done once every 5 years and indexation in between. Because the council is doing the full portfolio this year, that is really helpful. It means that we will rebuild assurance quickly over PPE if we're able to test that. However, if we are not able to complete our procedures, it means we're potentially looking at 5 years until the next point at which full valuations will be made. So just stress that I think PPE is a really key area that we will want to focus on as we get through the audit this time. In terms of our value for money risks, they do align to the 3 weaknesses that we reported in the previous year. We have fed back our view on the council's financial sustainability in the position since, and obviously EFS happened towards the end of 25-26 as well. The other weaknesses we will touch on at the end of the audit, partly based on our experience of delivering the audit and what we see as we get into detailed working papers and the quality of the financial statements. So I'm happy to leave it there, Chair, and take any questions.
Yeah, that's fine, but you're going to have to shout up if you need a question, because we can't see your little hand up on that little screen, so you'd have to say "hum" or something. And now it sounds like one of those films. Right, the first question, I'll start it off as I'm chairman at the moment. There you go. EY described the council financial position as critical and unsustainable without corrective action. What objective indicators should this committee monitor over the next 12 months to determine whether the council is genuinely moving out of that position?
Thank you, Chair. Given that this is now a combined audit and scrutiny committee, there's 2 answers to that. In terms of the audit committee portion, the key things are delivery to the audit plan, a set of accounts that show what they should do, which is £40 million in general fund and a slight rebuilding of general fund reserves earmarked. But those are the key items in terms of the accounts. I think the other thing you will look at, and we'll have it as a separate session, is the annual governance report, which will set out all of the issues that came out of number one, the Section 24 report last year, the last 2 years audit recommendations, anything that's going to come up from EFS requirements from the government, all of that will be included in the governance statement, and then delivery to that governance statement. So those are the really key indicators in the accounts. I think, though, probably the bigger issues and bigger things you'll be checking are when you get into the scrutiny side of this committee, because you will now be getting the monitoring reports 10 days after Cabinet, which is significantly quicker probably than the Council has ever done, and one of the reasons why we've joined just the finance and performance bits up, because it's really crucial that there is a stable group of people that really are getting into how we're delivering and how the Cabinet are delivering on a monthly basis. And so that is the other key. And, you know, the monitoring will, the Cabinet papers are just about to go out. The key things are, you know, and they'll come out, they're pretty obvious. Are we overspending? You know, where are the pressures? How are we mitigating pressures? Are we managing the capital programme properly? Are we then also, on a monthly basis as we go forward, delivering to what we need to actually get ourselves out of the FS as quickly as possible, which means by the time we get to September, October, November time, when the draft budget comes out, and you know that's part of the thing you'll see in December, is how credible is that? Are we getting anywhere near the 45-50 million we need to actually move ourselves forward? How credible is that plan? Another one, you know, in terms of EFS is, at the moment, the budget book says we are going to pay for EFS from debt. Well, government doesn't really like that. They'll expect us, like Birmingham and others, to pay for a massive proportion of that through sales. And so another thing, you know, you will be looking at is our asset sales, how we're delivering that, and actually how that impacts the council.
I'll give you another one now, and then I'll let you guys come in. Beyond EY and internal audit, who is providing independent challenge to the council recovery programme?
Thank you. So we voluntarily set up an intervention board for the council to look at and help the council move forward with its financial position and give independent external challenge to our direction. We had the first meeting of that in the middle of June. I think our next meeting, and I'll look at Tony because I can't quite remember, but I think it's early August, I think. That's really key because, again, we've got a mixture of people from members, we've got senior officers of other councils, and we've got people from the LGA as well in the various areas who will challenge us on our ideas and how we go forward. And obviously, the government will take a view of an intervention panel in terms of what their view is and how their view is taken forward. And, you know, make no mistake, MACLG will take a view of what the intervention panel says.
Just a point of accuracy, it's an improvement board rather than intervention panel. Thank you.
You've been watching too much crime films, that's why. Right, anything else, Peter? No? Okay, do you want to...
I'm particularly interested, page, where are we, 28 I think it is, in the key risks to be assessed, because that seems to loop back to the disclaimed audit options and rebuild assurance, because we just heard that there's risks with regard to that anyway. I mean, some of them I understand, but some I'm not sure what they mean. So, starting with the last bullet point, valuation of council dwellings, isn't that a fairly standardised methodology?
It is, but it's a huge number. And so, one of the difficulties councils across the country have always had is keeping track of their buildings and their disposals and additions. And so that is one of the key things that the auditors will look at. And it's an issue almost everywhere. You know, we've spent a lot of time trying to improve it. as I've just said, we've had an issue with council dwellings and dwelling numbers, which sort of reflects one of, the fact that it is more difficult than it seems at the face.
What does that mean, that you've had an issue with it? I mean, and I've been banging on about this for such a long time, about having an asset register. And I see the nods from my colleagues across the table, because it's always astonished me how it is that we are a commercial organisation to an extent. Of course we provide services as well. But years ago I asked a question, do we know what properties we've got? And essentially I was told, no, we don't. And I find that amazing that an organisation like this doesn't know what it's got. So it's not a question of valuing what we've got, it's more a question of we don't know how much value we've got in property because we don't know how many properties we've got. Is that right?
I'll go quickly and go over to Dan, who's got the function. We do know how many properties we've got. I think the difficulty is making sure we're actually marrying up when we do disposals and acquisitions. The vast majority of our properties, probably 99% almost, don't change year to year, and in fact we've had most of them for probably 50 years. It's those changes at the edge that cause us the issues.
Before Dan, Mark has, we've got his little hand up there, so I'll go to Mark first and I'll come over to you. Is that okay? Go on, Mark.
Thanks, Chair. Just to add to that, in terms of obviously this is an audit risk, so to explain the rationale for identifying it from our perspective is the valuation of property assets for this applies both to council dwellings but also the land and buildings that we have a separate risk for is they might have an established approach and a value that's been used for a number of years and a prepared base for doing so, but there is an inherent judgment involved in doing that. Just as an example, if you ask 3 estate agents to value your house, you're probably going to get 3 different answers. So the risk is around the reasonableness of the assumptions made in coming up with those valuations at the portfolio level, because given the size of it, the council dwelling portfolio is not that far short of £1 billion. You don't have to have particularly large changes in the underlying assumptions to produce a materially different valuation, and therefore we pay quite a lot of attention to the reasonableness of those assumptions. That's the basis for the risk.
Thanks, Mark. Dan?
Thank you. Just to really set out that we are undertaking and will complete this year a root and branch review of all of our assets. We've got cabinet support and in the budget for additional resources to accelerate that work. We will be bringing and putting in place a new system and importantly bringing all the data sets together and reconciled when we load that in. So it's work in progress, and as Pete said, it's around the edges that we need to particularly strengthen, but having a complete and integrated data set allows us to interrogate that data a lot more effectively, and as Councillor Riley's highlighted, all those things that are currently weaknesses won't be in the future.
Yeah, I think it would be a good one to bring back to the scrutiny side of things. I'm an interim chair at the moment, and I don't really want to get into depth of scrutinising things at the moment till we've actually got someone who's actually going to be properly in the chair. But if you can do that, that'd be helpful. And also, in the portfolio, there'll be things that we cannot sell. Yeah? I want to know those in there as well. So, civic centre, leisure facilities, things like that. So that gives us a better relation of what is available to sell and what is not available to sell. Yes, John?
My point about dwellings is that I'm assuming that there is a standardised or some sort of formula by professional valuers that can be fairly easy to apply, and that the idea that we make assumptions about buildings which have a formula for assessment of value, I really don't understand. I'm aware of a whole industry of surveyors and different types of people who value buildings, and especially as domestic buildings or dwellings. So why are we making assumptions about something that ought to be fairly straightforward?
Through you, Chair. Like Mr Rutter said, unfortunately the different surveyors have slightly different methodologies, so there is not a standard methodology across local government, and that's what the auditors look at as well. And so if there was, it'd be so much easier.
I think the secret is local government, isn't it?
Okay, one more. Thank you. Obviously, with my pensions hat on, valuation of pensions, assets and liabilities, that's fairly strong, isn't it, though? And indeed, the audit, the pensions audit is a fairly strong area anyway. So how is that, why is that a risk?
As Mr Rutter said, a lot of these risks are standard every year, and so there's always about four or five prescribed risks that are pretty similar year to year. They might change at the margins, and then there might be one or two others that are added on the general council one, but the audit ones for the pension fund are pretty standard, and valuation, because of obviously it's 1.5 billion, is the biggest.
Okay, thanks.
Tony, welcome.
Sorry, apologies, I was working on the 6 o'clock start.
That's all right. The football's on later, that's why. You were emailed though. I checked. Go on anyway.
Okay, right.
Let's get on with it.
First of all, I need to declare an interest, purely interest, as I was a retired member of the local government pension scheme.
Okay. What agenda item?
6.
Okay.
Which I think
We're already done. Oh, we're doing it now, actually.
You're doing what?
We're on 6 now.
6, okay. I've got a couple of questions, if I may.
Yes, you may.
We know that the delivery of the statement of accounts has been delayed yet again. I noticed that in the report to us, it talked about there being 7 London councils which are in the same position.
54 in England. Yeah.
And I checked today, and there's just 2 in London now. Just us in Redbridge.
Okay.
All the others have delivered their accounts. Which probably explains part of the reason why we've had the letter from the Ministry today regarding
which we're noting and moving on.
Yeah, okay. There was mention as a high-risk area by EY. The volume of values reference made to high-risk.
Noted, yeah.
Does EY believe that they will be able to complete the audit procedures to ensure that any such are identified this year?
I think you answered that earlier on, Mark. Do you want to have another go at it?
Yes, certainly, Chair. Yes, I mean, we have arrangements in place and the resources there to do all of the testing which we'd expect to be able to complete if we were doing a normal year and giving an opinion based on having opening balances assurances, testing in year transactions and closing balances. Obviously, we don't have opening balances assurances, and that will impact the form of our opinion. Whether or not we are able to get through all of the testing that we plan to do will depend on whether or not we encounter the same issues we've experienced in the previous 2 years in terms of the finance team's capacity to support the audit and the quality of the working papers. Finance team, through the finance modernisation programme and other actions, have taken a number of steps to get themselves into a better position to support the audit this year. But until we get into the detailed testing, which we aren't planning to start until mid-August, we don't really have a basis for saying whether or not we think those actions have been effective yet.
Hey, Tony?
Moving on from that, if I may.
Yep.
There was problems with Oracle which was preventing the automatic reconciliation.
Microphone, please.
Sorry.
I'm sure the residents would love to hear your lovely tones. So.
Well, indeed. Yes, there was a problem with Oracle and the automatic reconciliation of bank accounts. Has that been resolved yet?
So that is still manual, but we're almost there in terms of a final solution to it, so it will become automated. Part of that included actually updating the feeds from the bank.
Okay, thank you. If I may...
I'll ask one and then you can come back in. How about that? Yeah?
Right.
Okay. I don't know, this is maybe a little bit provocative, but with audit fees having risen 25% to 542,000, what specific dated actions are in train to secure a clean option on the 25-26 accounts, and what would officers regard as evidence of real progress by the next update?
Okay.
That'll make it difficult.
No, that's fine. Well, in reality, audit fees, if you compare them to what we were paying 10 years ago under the Audit Commission, are actually a lot less at the moment, even with the increases, because we're part of a agreement across the whole country where I think all but 3 or 4 councils are in, and what that's done is drive audit prices down, potentially maybe slightly too low. You know, as a 151 officer, I look at my external audit report as an assurance report. How we get assurance? Well, that assurance is that comparatively, when we get that interim audit results report at the end of November, that I've got loads less red than I did last year. In terms of, there's about 26, 27 areas, and we went down by 8 last year. I'd expect us to go down by a significant number again this year.
Tony.
I'll switch it on this time.
Sorry, before I say, Mark, your hand is still up. You want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I noticed as part of the question there was a reference to a clean opinion for 25-26 there, so I just wanted to be absolutely clear for the committee. The audit opinion for 25-26 will be a disclaimer. That is not based on what we find as part of the testing for 25-26. That is based on the fact that we do not have sufficient assurance coming from previous years to be able to issue a clean opinion for this year. What the focus of the audit for this year is to make sure that we can obtain the maximum assurance we can over closing balances at 31st of March 2026 and the in-year transactions during 25-26 that will support us in rebuilding towards a clean opinion in future years.
So can I ask a follow-up question to that? So if further slippage risks are 4 consecutive disclaimer options, is that right? Yeah. Okay, fine. Thank you. Fine.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of queries. One, on page 43 of the EY report, the review of service delivery models refers to the statutory recommendations. However, the report on GRIP gave no details of a review of the service delivery models. You recall, Tony, sorry, through you, Chair, Mr. Zaman, that it only really talks about budgetary controls. It doesn't actually talk about examining the service delivery models, which is the crucial thing, which I think we need, was one of the statutory recommendations made by EY last year.
So yeah, when Steve came in last year, Steve Muldoon, one of the things that was looked at were all of the underpinning models in terms of for all demand services, of how we were assessing and delivering our estimates of how much we would need to go forward. So the financial models used for the vast majority of services that take about 70-80% of our funds were looked at.
Okay, I'm not sure that really answered the point, because it didn't actually say that in the GRIP report last time. Just looking back at the minutes and the decision of Cabinet on the 20th of February 2025 to bring in the capacity and capability to create and deliver the financial improvement programme, I see that Cabinet also required the Corporate Director of Finance to report back to on the programme quarterly. This was a result of the report from the then Section 151 officer. I can't see any such report having been made to Cabinet since that time. And it really worries me that we're talking about 16 months on. What Cabinet decided doesn't seem to have been actually applied, and it seems to me to give somewhat an indication that perhaps the organisation really isn't understanding quite how serious the position was.
I can't comment for that, and I don't know, but I will ask you guys to have a look at that and bring it back to the next committee. It's only the 5th of August, it's not that far away. Yeah? All right? Okay. You've had your questions now, Tony. Any other questions?
Of course. How many do you want?
Dan, you get 3. Daniel, anything? Adam? Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry,
sorry.
I missed out on some of the earlier questions and the earlier...
You can't. You have to be here on time.
Well, I think it's really quite serious.
Well, there's other items and maybe they cross-reference there, but I'm not going to go backwards. I'm trying to keep to the timetable. Councillor Mathers, you wanted to ask a question.
Yes. So we've heard that assurances are part of the audit process. We know that there's going to be a qualification on future accounts because previous assurances couldn't given. You've noted the best value notice, which obviously highlighted the serious concerns, significant concerns about things, and the need for...
Let's not get into that. I've noted that. Question.
Okay, you said that, yes, the need for, the progress that's been spoken about to continue, and a number of factors. And I do think the Audit Committee should be asking for an update on that announcement today so the public can be reassured.
As I said, I've noted it.
Okay.
And it will be, when it's noted, it will come back to the committee at some point, but I don't want to get into something that's only just dropped. It's not fair. Okay?
Okay. So, my question is, how much support is the finance team, the auditors going to get in order to make sure that the governance progress, the issues around different matters of evidence base, etc., has that been reviewed, how much support might be needed so there aren't future delays in preparing and auditing the accounts for the coming year?
I can answer that. This committee will make sure that they get what they want. Already you were here actually, but my view is that Alex is doing a fantastic job in his area. He needs more support. You should give him more support. So we'll address that on the scrutiny side of this committee. Is that fair enough?
I only ask in order to ensure that the audit process and planning is what's been the change, what's been the journey over recent years to make sure that we can get closer and closer to providing the audited accounts that are needed.
Peter, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, sure. Can I just correct one thing? We've not had qualified accounts. They've been disclaimed. It's actually quite a big difference. Yeah, it's all right. Because we've got, obviously, I'm covering for the 151 at the moment, we've got someone else starting in terms of high-level finance support to help manage operational day-to-day finance. So he starts on Monday, because there is, one of the most important things we've got to do over the next 4 months is to make sure that Mark and the other EY people are getting the information they require at the right time. So we've already had pre-meetings with them, or a couple, to try and get the learning points from last year, because, again, we had an issue in terms of how information came backwards and forwards, because they put the data, Andrew sends a load of data to them, they get their samples from that, but it doesn't always bring the data back in a way that we can deal with. So we've done quite a lot of work with them so far this year to do that, but for me the key is managing that process to make sure they get the stuff back, because that's probably, we improved, I think the comments were last year's process was an improvement on the previous year, but we've got to show another stepped improvement on that part of the process this year.
Thank you. John, you wanted to ask another question?
Thank you. Going back to the list of risks, bullet 2, risk of fraud in revenue and expenditure on page 28, expenditure recognition through inappropriate capitalisation of revenue expenditure and the use of capital reserves. If we know that it's inappropriate to do that, is it not a quick fix not to do it, or how is it a risk going forward, or is this one of those things that's there all the time?
It's there all the time, but I mean, one of the things again that Steve Muldoon did last year was we reviewed our use of capitalisation to do transformation, and our number this year is about 3.5 million. It is significantly lower than what it's been before and really been vetted. And one of the reasons for that is as well, and it won't be as big an issue for us this year, is I actually need capital receipts to try and pay off EFS, and so it's going to be a small figure going forward.
All right, thank you.
Mark.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, just to expand on that from the audit perspective. So, auditing standards require us to assume there is a risk of fraud on all audits and assess where that might arise. In the context of a local government body, we consider the most given the way reserves work in local government, the most likely way that would manifest is between the split of revenue and capital and the impact on reserves there. Now, in recognising that risk, we're not saying we think management have done something inappropriate, but what that risk is recognising is the fact that there is a potential that they could do so. And it's not saying that they know it, that it's inappropriate and it's just been done incorrectly. It's a fraud risk, so it's specifically effectively asserting that management know that it shouldn't be capital, but have called it that anyway. Again, I want to be clear, I'm not saying that we think that has happened, but the risk is there as the presumed risk in auditing standards, and we recognise that and respond to that through our audit procedures.
Thank you, Mark. I think we're about done now on this one. Do we need them? Do we need Mark and that for anything further, or? Okay. Well, you're more than welcome to stay. Yeah. So, firstly, can we agree the recommendations? Agreed. Okay. Thank you very much. So we go on to item 7, the Risk Assurance Annual Report 25-20. My highlight of the day, Claire. Go on.
Thank you. So this report summarises the risk register as at the end of March, and also the risk management arrangements during 25-26. This is the second year when we had our new risk system in, and there's been a positive step change. 24-25 was very much focused on getting risks onto the system, getting people trained up. Positive change in 25-26 is moving towards managing the risks on the risk system, so putting actions in place to mitigate those risks, and also individual services taking ownership of the registers, having internal audit, risk assurance stepping back, and putting more emphasis on accountability within the directorates and within services. At the year end, we had 222 risks, of which 47% were amber, 12% were red, 40% were green. We had 24 risks without actions, which is a small number and quite positive, and we only had 10 overdue for review. At the year end, we had 26 red risks. We did do a post-year end review and have reduced that down to 16, which is in the separate risk assurance report, so I won't go into too much detail until we get to that. As it is a positive report, we have moved from risk aware to risk defined on our risk maturity assessment. This is the middle of the 5 levels, but it is a positive movement. And going forwards, we're looking at how we can review our risk to make sure we're not getting any become static. So looking at how we can close off some of the risks that have been on there since the beginning. And that was all I was going to really say on this.
Claire, short and sweet. That gives us all a chance to ask some questions. I'll ask the first one. What specific mitigation actions on the balanced budget risk are planned for 26-27, and what measurable change would members expect to see in this risk rating by the next report?
I'm going to hand over to Pete. So that's a Pete risk, so I'll hand over to him.
So I suppose we've got the biggest mitigation, which was sort of with the letter that came out today in terms of EFS being approved in terms of the 2 amounts. However, to mitigate it down, really the key date is going to be November and the draft budget and what that gap is down to.
Another question, and then I'll open it to the floor. Liquidity risk was upgraded during this year. What early warning thresholds are now in place, and at what point would deterioration trigger formal statutory reporting? Can you give us a brief explanation to the committee around this?
That's me again. Thank you, Chair. Last year, when we were in discussions with the government, when we do our cash flow, and we do a yearly cash flow, towards the end of the year, the projections were showing potentially that we might run out of cash. And so part of those discussions with MHCLG were around when we needed EFS and the timings. In the end, actually, some other grant funding came in early, and our cash position actually improved quite a bit in the second half of the year. Obviously, we've not got the same issue this year because, number one, we've got EFS. We've rebuilt our reserves by 40 million. But also, more importantly, we've got the £62 million of EFS that's supporting this year's budget, which is all cash flow. But then the third factor is... I'll keep going. Oh dear. The fact is that... let's put that off.
Hello? I think that's fine. Peter?
And the third one is, for the last 3 years, we've been actually funding the DSG deficit from our cash balances. So the DSG deficit at the moment is £76 million. We're funding that through working balances, which was another drain on cash. In the early or mid-autumn, we will get 90% of that back from the government. So that will be another 60 to 70 million pounds worth of cash, which we've had to use to cover that deficit, will be back in our account. So cash flow is not going to be an issue to the same extent this year as last year.
On that, Peter, though, obviously we've paid money. Are we going to get any of that money that we've paid back from the DSG?
No, so we paid the money for DSG, so DSG are going to give us 90% of the money we've paid for the DSG deficit back.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Questions from the floor? Tony?
Yeah, on the DSG, it's much more complicated than the straight 90% because it takes into account the safety valve contributions from the government and from us. So it's
that's what I was about. That was what I was trying to say.
Yeah,
are we going to get any of that back? That's what I was about.
Kind of. It works out to roughly 90. I think Schools Forum were told 71 million we were going to get back, but I thought that was a bit over the top, to be honest. Anyway, that wasn't the question I was going to ask. We were talking about risk assurance, aren't we? Get back to that. Through you, Chair. Claire, can you provide details of all the statutory service provision risks, both in the corporate register and elsewhere? I appreciate you may not be able to do that now, but it would be helpful to actually see those. I know, Chair, that certain audit committees actually look at some of the files on risk management, on risk assessment, on the risk register, to kind of assure the committee that they're being carried out correctly. And I don't know whether that might be worthwhile thinking about, particularly when we get the new chair.
Well, that's something you can raise with the new chair, but I don't think it's worth it at the moment. Claire, do you want to answer the question?
Yeah, I mean, we don't tend to bring a lot of detail of the actual risks to the audit committee because obviously you're very much focused on assurance that risks are being managed elsewhere by other groups. In terms of the statutory ones, I'm happy to provide more information, maybe focusing on the red and amber ones, if that's okay, because they are the bigger ones to the organisation. Some of the smaller ones will be minor things managed within services. For instance, I think there's a low-level one for internal audit with the global internal audit standards. We are complying with them, but it's on there as a risk anyway. So that's kind of an example of a low-level one. But yeah, I'm happy to provide a bit more information on the red and amber ones outside of the meeting. I can share that.
Okay, thank you. John?
I would like to bring this down to a bit of a practical level. Clearly, all of these risks that are identified have a departmental and staffing effect, as it were, because that's where it starts, I suppose, or maybe that's where it lands. To what extent are staff trained, educated, wary of, looking out for the consequences which then cause these risks that have to be managed?
That's an easy one for you, Claire.
So in terms of training for risk management, so we do a lot of risk management training. I do that. We have a lot of guides available online, things to look out for. We did Council Connect, raising the profile of it. Everybody has, or heads of service and above, have access to JCAD. Anybody new gets induction training with me in terms of the risk system. There is always going to be some areas that are more proactive putting things on than others. A lot of people manage things themselves, and it might take a bit longer to put it on there, but yeah, no, overall I don't have any concerns with any particular areas not putting stuff onto the risk register.
But okay, so I suppose what I'm getting at is the extent to which officers who do things which could then create a risk or add to a risk. And it may be that it's part of their work and they have to do it, but the extent to which they see the relationship between what they do and the creation of risk, I guess that's really what I'm talking about. I mean, it's all very well to educate in relation to what it is and all the rest of it, but the extent to which they really understand that how they do and what they do it, and maybe it's got to be done differently in order to mitigate or stop in the first place.
Yeah, so risk management, I mean, it applies in every kind of decision. It's included within our sort of decision reports as well. So our cabinet papers are, it's in our project plans, it's in our business cases, in terms of identify the potential risks of doing something, whatever it is that person's choosing to propose. So yeah, we take risk into consideration in any of those kind of aspects. If things then go forward, it should then be on JCAD and it should be on our risk system. Yeah.
And Tony, from a top-down position, you're happy with what's going on?
I can confirm there's lots going on.
In terms of the way in which the type of risks that we're being told need to be identified from from an overall staff position, the relationship between what our people do and the creation of risk. Have you got a good sort of grip on all of that?
We have, and it is an interesting question. I suppose I look at it from that macro point of view, and if we take social care services as an example, the fact that we need social workers to be compliant with doing their job on a day-to-day basis, doing assessments in an appropriate way, and so on and so forth. Where the risk actually manifests itself is the consequences of that, not what they do necessarily, if that makes sense, because those sorts of things get managed through the casework management. It's more that if we have more assessments that we need to undertake that result in more packages of care that then cost the council more money than we'd planned for, then that starts to tip into the risk. At that level. Does that make sense? So rather more than, because I think the more transactional things that happen on a day-to-day basis are managed through line management of whatever it be, whether you're a planner, whether you're a housing officer, whether you're a social worker, whether you're an accountant, or whatever. So I think it's what we're looking at more is the consequences of all of those sort of transactions, which the risk register, and actually Claire, Pete and I were talking just before this about sort of reviewing what that corporate landscape of risk looks like in order that it's commensurate with what this new administration's priorities are.
All right, good, that's great.
So it's the financial risk that we're looking at?
It's not only financial, but obviously lots of things do result in a financial consequence. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? I'll move on. Okay, move on. Thank you very much. Item 8, internal audit.
Thank you. So we have the internal audit annual report for 25-26. So this is summarising the work undertaken by internal audit during that year. In total we did 40 pieces of internal audit work, 24 assurance reviews. This is where we're giving assurance whether there are effective controls in place to mitigate key risks in the area under review. We did 11 advisory reviews. This is where we're doing proactive support or proactive advice in relation to areas of improvement or known areas where they need further support, and 5 grant claims. There was a slight decrease in the numbers of pieces of work. This was due to vacancies within the team because we were recruiting during the year for an assistant manager. However, this didn't have an overall impact on our ability to deliver the full plan and the opinion statement at the year end. Of the 24 assurance reviews, 60% were substantial or reasonable assurance, which is very positive. 36% were limited, and we had one no assurance review in relation to green spaces. And a list of all the reports and the work undertaken is included within the appendices. The overall head of internal audit opinion on the governance, risk and internal control arrangements during 25-26 was limited assurance. However, this reflects that this is ongoing improvements in governance arrangements during 25-26. Some of the positive things to pull out are the improvement around budget monitoring, the performance data and the use of the balanced scorecards going forward, risk management, as I previously talked about, the step change in our risk management arrangements, and also looking at the standardisation of directorate governance meetings and having standard agendas. So all positive movements within 25-26. This is an ongoing process, so we are now looking at how we can embed some of these new processes and some of the changes that are ongoing at all levels and across all the different directorates, and also looking at strengthening cross-cutting monitoring, so where controls are delegated to different directorates, making sure there's consistency across the organisation. So things like we've talked about asset management, grants, corporate policies, things like this, making sure that we have that oversight. Obviously as well, this is, just reflecting on 25-26, things have moved on since the year end. There has, obviously post-election, change in the audit committee. We are looking at the new council strategy, and one of the things internal audit will be doing is reviewing our plan and the governance arrangements to make sure they are aligned with the new council strategy once that is finalised. The only other thing to mention on internal audit is, I know at the last audit committee meeting there was a question raised around the Q4 report. Historically, internal audit has done quarterly reporting. This changed when I joined. We're now looking at giving more live reporting, so we do progress reports at the point when the papers are due, or as close as possible as I can do it, so you get the live up-to-date information. Normally, or historically, we did a Q4 report because we would then bring the head of internal audit opinion and the annual report to the September meeting. Since I joined, we've brought that forward, so normally the annual report will come to the May meeting, so this wouldn't be as late, and you would get a progress report at this meeting, showing the work that we've done up to this point. Obviously, this is quite a big agenda, so we are looking at, and we're also looking at changing the internal audit plan with that new council strategy. So going forward, you would be getting this annual report in May and a progress report in the July meeting. This is just for this year because of the change with the committee, and we've moved things to this meeting. I do also appreciate that there is more information in terms of the plan within the progress report, and because that hasn't come, I'm happy to share a copy of the current plan outside of the meeting as well, as I know that was a question that was asked. So I will share our current tracker as well.
Thank you, Claire. You make everything sound really fantastic. Unfortunately, that limited assurance is the second lowest of the grading. So, my question, probably to you, Peter. What is the plan to restore internal audit own capacity given the vacant assistant manager post? And how will that be resourced for 26-27 saving plan gets a higher level of independent testing than the 17 million target did? And the reason I'm asking this is because there's a theme running with me at the moment, is staffing. If we need staff, we should be getting them to make this process easier and quicker. Anyway, I'll leave that with you.
In terms of staff, ironically, Claire and I have had the conversation in the last 3 days, and we're going out to advert for the vacant positions. One of them was tied up to a degree with the way that the staff are working. In terms of the wider audit plan, remember our audit plan is based on risk and changes throughout the year, and so it's really important that we focus on those important areas. But you're right in terms of the savings plan for 22 million that we've got in that, and that is going to be key to actually making sure that we deliver to that. So internal audit will check it at one stage or another, but it's important that actually when we've got the scrutiny part of this committee, when we look at the monitoring going through the year, that this committee looks at it, and also that the assurance board looks at it as well, because that's going to be key tasks for both of those.
I'll ask my other question and then I'll open it to the floor. I appreciate that. Obviously, there's only one accountant on here, the rest of us aren't, so we're going to need some guidance on that going forward. But my second question is, what has changed in how saving targets are set and monitored in year, so that a repeat of the 17 million to 3.6 million gap is prevented, and how will members be given early warning if delivery starts to slip? Because obviously you're asking us to look at this. We need the advice from you guys to sort of help us understand it a bit better.
I think it started back in the fall, in the autumn. We ran a much more robust budget process this year than we have in previous years in terms of what was making up the 84 million of increased costs and the 22 million of savings. Both of those figures were scrutinised really heavily. We're also in a place where the 22 million is roughly what we've delivered last year. So we have now got the start of a track record of delivering it, and I take your point on board, because previous years our average has been about 13 million, and we've probably been overly ambitious in delivering that. So that's there. In terms of where we are, we've actually just had this afternoon, the corporate management team, a review of all amber and red risks, because although, as you'll see when the monitoring report comes out tomorrow, we're in a much better place in terms of where we were this time last year, and we probably can get back, we'll show a lot more improvement by period 3. We've still got things we need to make sure that if they're not delivered, that they're mitigated, because one of the key indicators that's going to come back from the government is delivery of the savings.
Questions? Tony?
Great, thanks, Chair. Claire, it's good news that we've moved, or your view of the council is that it's slightly improved. Of course, it could just be on the edge, so we moved from no to, but anyway, we will see. Of all of the internal audit activity, how many actually represented or related to the statutory recommendations which Ernst & Young gave?
So we don't do audits directly on those, because we know that you're going to get assurance through EY for those. But we did look at things like the savings programme. We look at things like income generation, with how we're maximising income. We do look at budget monitoring and some of the things around our budget managers confident with using the system and aware of their roles and responsibilities around budget management. We did look at things like the saving programme, saving delivery. So we looked at a lot of the things that are included within there, because that's part of our governance improvement plan as well. So we look at what's in there and what is it that we're going to get assurance. We do have a lot more in the plan for this year as well, in terms of some of those key areas around governance, directorate governance, business plans, savings programme, budget monitoring. They're all in there as well.
Okay, you want your second question now?
Second question. Bearing in mind that the statutory accounts were delayed by 12 weeks last year, do you have any views on how quickly they're likely to be available this year, based on the evidence of what work you've done?
That's on the risk, yeah? Okay.
So I'm not proactively involved in doing the accounts. I do, get updates through the team. I do provide my information for internal audit on behalf of, internal audit for that. I haven't done any direct work on that. But
okay, thank you. And final question?
You may, Tony.
Nobody else wants to ask. Yes, it was just really that, bearing in mind some of the issues which we've had, I think, as a committee, and probably the previous committee have had in understanding some of the information which you were provided with. I wonder whether there's any opportunity for your team to do some sort of advisory work on preparation of presentation to the audit committee of information. Then it may also apply to cabinet as well.
We'll come to that later because that's item 9, I think, isn't it?
That's the annual report.
That's about training though, item 9. But yeah, you can answer the question.
Very briefly, we definitely have more training in the plan. We need to do training in terms of the role of internal audit because it's required under the Global Internal Audit Standards, so you're definitely going to get more training. Sorry. That's amazing. Yeah, definitely.
So, just to go back on that, it really wasn't to do with training, it was to do with the presentation of the information which we're provided with generally in the reports on the agenda, and whether that could be done in a better way.
So the other thing is, in terms of the annual report for the audit committee, we are looking at the way that we're going to do that this year. So historically, it's been a very high-level summary of the work that was done. Under the new kind of requirements and SIPA guidance in relation to the role of the audit committee, we are looking at evaluating the effectiveness of the committee, and part of that will be your opinion on the reports that you get, you're confident with your skills and experience, and looking at getting feedback from you on the effectiveness of internal audit, of counter fraud, of other officers, so really getting more feedback from you guys to make sure we can improve. So yeah.
Thank you.
John,
I've sort of almost forgotten now, but you mentioned there was a problem with the reporting from the green spaces. What was that all about?
So that was, we just did an audit on green spaces. That was just the only no assurance report in the year. It was a particular focus area, so we were asked to go and look at that because we knew it was going to be a kind of high risk area. There was a whole new management since that audit was done. That was back in October 25, so this is, well changed since that audit was completed. It was a targeted audit looking at green spaces in particular.
And what are the improvements? And in terms of looking at things and being able to point at stuff, what are the improvements as far as green spaces are concerned?
So that audit was looking at things like, did they have objectives, did they have budget monitoring arrangements within that service, so at a very operational level, did they have risk registers in place when we're talking about the risk system. I know, because I see the risk system, that's definitely improved a lot since then. Dan, I don't know if you want to say anything on that.
Please. I'm pleased to say, obviously I've inherited this situation, but we've brought in a new management team who are red hot and on it. And we have, since April, we've had got a programme of work, and that gets reported to me. Four key areas of programmes of work that get reported to me every month, and I share that with the cabinet members. So governance is improved, and that covers budget, performance, obviously demand where that applies, but also risks as well.
And I'm sure it's very hot.
I mean, the thing is, it's one of a number of really public facing effect type things, isn't it? So,
public touch.
Yes, public touch or public sight. That's a better one. It's a good thing because people see the effects of that and very quickly want resolutions and all the rest of it. So having a good responsive green spaces team is a really good thing.
But obviously you're on a tight budget as well, Dan. Yeah? We'll be looking at that. Councillor Matthews, is there anybody on the committee who's got another question? No? Okay, Councillor Matthews.
Thank you, Chair. So I know that some work was undertaken a couple of years ago with the kind of internal review and looking at the risk of the Pensions Committee, the Pensions Board, as a way of reinforcing and supporting members and the officers to ensure that they were carrying out their functions without, I don't know what you call it, professional risk might be the right words, may not be. I wondered if there were, or if there will be as part of your risk matrix, any review in 6 or 12 months' time on the new style and new term for this committee, so that you can ensure that it's covering all of its statutory duties, as well as their learning points and things that may come out.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of one of the things we're going to look at. Maybe for this year, more of a self-assessment in terms of against the best practice guidance with what the committee should be doing. But yeah, definitely going forward, looking at the effectiveness of the committee, that's absolutely fine.
Thank you very much. The next one is Audit Committee Annual Report, which is just a recommendation. So we'll move on from there. I mean, if anybody's got some questions on that. Yeah. Tony.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, on page 3 of the annual report, talks about national delays being an issue. I think probably I'm not sure that's accurate. I think there were delays in Hillingdon which may have been made worse by national issues, but it wasn't the national issues which specifically related to us. I think it just needs to be slightly altered there. That's just a suggestion. And there's no reference to governance in the report, including the Council's constitution in respect of contract procedure rules and financial regulations, which I think is meant to be part of the committee. And similarly, I'm not sure the committee has reviewed raising concerns at work policy, which the whistleblowers, which we should be doing, I think.
We can have a look at that in scrutiny, I think, and I would say the government was responsible for the situation. But anyway, any other questions on item 9? Okay, so we go to can we... Oh, sorry, because I've just changed computers and I haven't got my thing, so Lee should kindly show me. Review approved the draft Audit Committee Annual Report. So can we have... It's a recommendation, do we agree?
I was making some suggestions as to changes, amendments, which should be made to that report. That was the whole point.
Claire, do you want to come back on that?
I mean, if the other members want me to make the changes, this is your report. I'm purely taking it, so...
I don't... I mean, you're sidelining me slightly because obviously you're accountant, so you know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm not so sure that I do. I'm a businessman. I don't have that level of detail. What does the rest of the committee feel? So the recommendations you're asking are...
There's one, just to change the wording related to the delays in the preparation of the accounts, just so that instead of saying that it's all down to national reasons, it wasn't all down to national reasons.
A mixture of both.
Yeah, exactly. So it needs to just be... And then, apart from that, also referencing to the governance, the fact that that should have been looked at but wasn't, and also the raising concerns at work. Again, that was something which is part of the...
Right, can you email them to me?
I will,
and then I'll look at them and I'll come back to Peter. We'll get this and see what...
And then we can slightly amend it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Can you just delegate yourself to?
Yeah, can I... Is it okay if it's delegated to me? You happy?
I propose that it's delegated to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any excuse for me to speak to Peter. Right, any other questions on that? I think we'll move on, yeah? So, item 10 is risk assurance reports.
So that is ending the stuff that was the year-end stuff from the end of last year. This risk assurance report is our risk register as at the 1st of July. So this is our current risk register, or as current as we can get it. So in total there was 196 risks on our risk register at the time of this report, which is a decrease from the year-end report because we did quite a lot of work to review things at the year-end. Resident services continue to have the highest number of risks. This is purely because of the wide variety of services covered within that directorate, and the complexity of their services and the proactive approach that they take to adding risks onto the risk register. We have 16 red-rated risks. These are included at the end of the report. We have 3 unscored risks and 25 overdue for review. This is an increase from the year end, but it's not ridiculous numbers. It's okay. A lot of that was because we did a big push for the year end, because it is the year end. And we have 22 risks without actions. The only other thing I was going to say is we're currently reviewing our strategic risk register, as Tony mentioned. This is our strategic risks against our council strategy. So as we're reviewing the council strategy, we're reviewing those strategic risks. That will be coming to this committee as part of your scrutiny side, potentially at the next meeting, depending on when the council strategy is finalised, because it has to tie up with that. So that was all I was going to say.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions for you. Can you confirm all the four reflects a genuine resolution rather than reclassification?
In terms of the reduction in number of risks?
Yeah.
So most of them, they have been closed. A lot were kind of low-level risks. So yeah, it tends to be, we've had a couple of duplicates where people have put things on multiple different risk registers. But yeah, it wasn't a kind of clear out of it. Was
okay.
Type.
The other question is can the post-year end CMT review of risk scores be brought to this committee in full with a before and after comparison before it is treated as finalised? Is that okay?
So that was CMT going through the risk register the same as they would normally, so it wasn't a kind of separate paper or anything. The difference is between what was in the 26 risks in the year-end report and the 16 risks in the corporate risk register. If you look on page 6 of the report, 162 of the pack, that shows all of the risks that were either downgraded or closed off the corporate risk register, and all the new ones that have been added. So page 170 of the PDF, if you don't.
Okay. Davis, there you go. Yeah, lovely. That's it. Yeah, okay, thank you. Other questions?
Yeah, do we have a sort of incentivisation programme? Again, when you look at risks in the way that you've been talking about them, they come from somewhere, and they come from actions or activities and stuff. If officers are well acquainted with the consequences of what they do in terms of how that creates a risk. And again, I go back to the idea that maybe just doing your job causes a risk, and you don't really know how to mitigate something that you don't know is going to happen, but there are consequences. But is there any sort of incentivisation package or programme that we could bring in that makes people even more aware, and some sort of reward for solving things, or for getting things from amber to green or whatever?
Sweeties.
Yeah,
I mean,
Quality Street or something,
It should be their role. I mean, they should be doing that anyway. So if they're not recording things, if they're not considering the risks of the actions that they're doing and putting it onto our risk system, when something goes wrong, they're not fulfilling their role, they're not doing their job, because that is part of their role. As a head of service, you need to manage the risks to your service. So if I was doing something that could potentially mean that we're not going to be compliant with our standards, if we then weren't compliant, I would 100% hope that you would all turn around and be like, what were you doing? Why aren't you reporting it? Why weren't you taking action? So that is part of their role. In terms of taking action to reduce things down, that's one of the things that I want to look at more this year. So there are some risks that have been on there for a while that haven't changed. So I'm a bit more of a stick person than a carrot person. They should be managing them, so they should be reducing them down. So we're going to start monitoring, having KPIs around the length of time that risks stay on there.
Claire, you just have to have your inner Roy Keane, yeah? You know his famous quote. Any other questions? Adam?
Just more of a simple one. In terms of the risks, there's over 200. is there a way you prioritise different risks to be dealt with first, essentially red risks, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, so every risk that goes onto the system is risk scored against the same matrix in Appendix B of the report. So anything red is things that are very likely to happen and have a high impact. Anything that's red gets looked at CMT, and those are the main ones we focus. That's why you get the summary within all the risk reports for the audit committee, because they're the big impact ones. Anything kind of green is a service level should be managing, so like staffing, the vacancy in my team, there is a risk we're not going to deliver the plan because we've got a vacancy, the action is we're going to recruit someone in. All of that, you don't need to report to an audit committee, I need to manage that, that's my team. So yeah, green level stuff held up by services, we don't look at it at directorate level. Anything amber or red you look at, or should be looking at in their directorate meetings, and then everything red gets looked at the corporate management team on a monthly basis. So yeah, we kind of prioritise based on the likelihood and the risk.
John first.
On Appendix A, summary of corporate risks, and it's really just a question of interest. We've got Heathrow Airport expansion. So that's in all senses that's a national issue and a government issue. But in terms of risks that you've identified for us, what share of a government decision are we being risk assessed on?
I can look it up. So I should clarify, the risk register, they're not my risks. I just report them. They're very much CMT and everybody else's risks. So I can look it up in the system and tell you what it relates to, unless CMT know more information than I do.
Tony?
Well, being very unfair to yourself, but I'm sure CMT do know more than you do.
I think it's less about the point in itself, more about the impact of it. So we are looking to assess and understand the impacts for that eventuality on the borough, and we have a range of mitigations in place, which include engaging with the GLA to ensure that it's a wider issue than just about Hillingdon. We are engaging with the government. We've responded to the consultations on it. So I think it is more about how we manage any impact that may arise from it. And we are just, for example, now we have an operational group that's looking at the impact across all services, because changes down there make a significant difference to the villages that are down there, and therefore the services that we provide and the schools that are there, and so on and so forth. So we're assessing all of those things. So this risk is more about those circumstances rather more than the actual airport in itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. It's the effect of when it happens, which apparently is going to be about 40 years' time, but never mind.
Probably longer.
If and when it comes, it's a bit like HS2, isn't it? If and when it comes,
HS2 is being built. So.
Well, you say that. I mean, they seem to have ground to a halt because of one bridge strike, but there we go. I suppose really what I was asking, in one sense, is, to a large extent, and it's all in the public domain, we do understand, don't we, the kind of effects that there are going to be. I mean, travel, transport, all sorts of things.
Where's the
so if we're able to manage them, we're able to recognise them, we're able to influence them.
Thank you, John. Tony.
Thank you, Chair. I just looked, I realise that the risks are assessed and reviewed on a regular basis, probably by different people. But when I look at a couple, and just an example, of fleet costs and price fuel volatility, so that's fleet 0002 and Provid 0002, they seem to be, one is being increased and one is being reduced, and both of them relate to the price of fuel. And I wonder why that was.
So
diesel and non-leaded?
the fleet one is raised by our fleet service, and they are more have more controls and more steps that they can take in terms of saving fuel. I don't know, the kind of plans in place around agreements with organisations to get fuel. The other one relates to our providers for the homeschool transport, and also for other providers that rely on transport to provide a service. In terms of their costs increasing, then our costs increasing because they're pushing that price onto us. So that is more of a kind of financial risk around the providers, so not as big of an impact as the fleet one, but their fleet can take more action to mitigate the risk, which is why they have different risk scores.
They have different reasons, but one was being increased and one was being reduced, and that seemed to me to not make sense when...
Maybe it's more efficient on the vehicles that we're using.
I think
the
fleet one was decreasing because they were taking action about it, whereas the provider one was going on because we're starting to see those price increases coming through and that impact, which is why it was going up.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. We're all done there. So that bit is finished.
Agreed the recommendation.
So we agree the recommendations? Yep, great. So now, I don't know which of you officers are allowed to run away and which aren't, but you're more than welcome to leave if you have to, because this is the overview and scrutiny session, so I don't know who's taking that. You're taking this control. So who's going to talk about that item?
I've got a few words to say.
Yeah, go on.
Thank you, Chair. So just a few words on the overview and scrutiny item. This report provides a brief introduction to the committee's overview and scrutiny role. Alongside its audit and assurance responsibilities, the committee also scrutinises cabinet decisions, reviews policies and services, monitors performance and helps drive value for money for residents. As the Council's lead body for finance and performance scrutiny, the committee will receive regular budget and performance reports and play an important role in challenging and monitoring outcomes across the Council. The report is intended as a starting point. The draft work programme has been designed to remain flexible, allowing members to identify and shape future scrutiny topics and single meeting reviews. Members should also note that a dedicated scrutiny training session will be delivered later this summer by the Council's statutory scrutiny officer, which will provide a more practical overview of scrutiny in Hillingdon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, as I said earlier, we can dip in a few things, but nothing really in depth till the new chairman's in place. So I did ask you guys to send me something last time. Sorry, not you, Danny, because you weren't here. But so if you've got some things that you want to have a little deep dive into, then I want you to email them to me and to Anisha, so that I will then pick them up. Okay? Yes, Tony.
Chair.
You speak.
Quite apart from the fact that the LGA suggests that audit and scrutiny should be kept in separate committees.
We're not going to go down there again.
I know, we're going. I'll always mention it.
I know, that's fine.
The main point I was going to make was that we've got a list of, I think, 3 reviews which have been made, which are covered in the past by what we're just responsible for. I wonder whether we could have an update on all of those 3 areas, just so that we can see what's happened and whether the actual provision recommendations have actually been undertaken.
Yeah, I mean, that can be... Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. So we'll just check that they do fall part of the new committee's terms of reference, and also we'll come back to you.
Yeah, but it's all new, so that's just sort of thing. I mean, I think we want to be getting a deep dive where our biggest financial expenditures and stuff like that is something that I think that we should do as a scrutiny, to look at where we can save money and make things better. But anyway, as I said, you can email those to me and to Anisha, and then we will pick them up later. So, can we go to item 12, which is the budget outturn 26-25, 26? Is that you, Peter?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And one of the other things about this is, obviously, you're seeing it a week and a bit after Cabinet, and so it's going to be far more relevant and far more up to date, and that's one of the reasons we looked at doing this sort of approach. This report provides the Council's draft outturn, financial position and performance against 25-6 revenue and capital budgets. At the point this report went out, the Council had an overspend of 28.985 million, represented a positive movement of 7.7 million on month 10. 3.9 of the reduction was linked to service departments, and 3.9 is a positive variance in corporate budgets linked to timing differences in the collection fund. Of this difference, 7.3 million will be used to rebuild earmarked reserves in the statement of accounts to repair items that we took in the 24/5 accounts to actually get to the final position. We moved things from earmarked reserves to the general fund to ensure the general fund just remained in a positive nature. Over a number of years, we've adopted a strategy of doing all we can to maintain quality services while keeping costs to residents as low as possible. But, like most councils, we've now got issues. We've had to apply for EFS, and really this started in COVID-19, but if you look at the last 5 years, you'll see how, although the budgets look to have balanced, we've taken money from earmarked reserves in those past 3 or 4 years to actually balance the budget. We've talked before, but in the summer of 25, the external auditors, in fact July last year, issued their Section 24 statement. We are answering that through the audit process and other things, and also the audit recommendations from their reports, initial draft reports at the end of November and their final reports, which were the end of February. We are looking at all the improvements, and that is looked at through the GRIP and the financial management programme. However, without EFS, we wouldn't be able to balance the budget this year or close the accounts for last year, and that is key to actually the delivery of things. Just to touch on another couple of things, although we have talked about these now. The dedicated schools grant outturn position showed a reduced in-year deficit compared to what was planned, going down from 14.8 million to 10.2, which reflects a pretty proactive set of interventions that the children's team have been implementing over the last couple of years. Very positive. The HRA in overall terms break out even at outturn. However, really the key for the HRA is house building and the capital side, and obviously we saw a bit of slippage on the capital side, but not massive. The capital programme itself, the outturn position was 252 million against a budget of 343, so roughly a 30% slippage, which is in line probably with us in previous years. General fund was probably far more slippage, as you can see from the figures in the report, than the housing revenue account. I'll stop at that point. I've got help to answer technical questions if I can't do it.
Tony.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to say got no questions, but that's not.
Oh, that wouldn't be true, so I wouldn't like to say that.
Could I just suggest that we have a consistent approach to these presentations? Sometimes you have millions, and so it's 0.0001 of a million, and sometimes it's thousands, and it's a lot easier to do it in thousands. I don't know whether everybody else found that problem, but it really, that's just a thought. I don't understand the collection fund position. And would it be possible to try and explain, either Matt or, because I know that there are deficits and surpluses on the business rates and the council tax, but they don't come in at the same time, and they're dealt with slightly differently for this purpose.
Unlike private sector accounting, the government makes special rules around the collection fund, and the rule generally is that once you set your budget in February, that's the amount that you will receive during the following financial year. Any surplus or deficit is held in a unusable reserve called the collection fund adjustment account and released a year later. Remember that district councils typically build for council tax and set the tax base. County councils had no involvement in setting of the council tax. Government didn't want county councils to be impacted by an estimating error by a district council and only find out about it at the very end of the year. So any surplus or deficit in the collection fund typically gets moved to the following year. It's held in an earmarked reserve. Helpfully, when for government, or maybe not so helpful, in business rates, they charge a levy on any surplus that the council makes over and above their expected target. They don't put that levy or tariff through the same procedure. If our business rates goes down, we don't see the impact of any of that deficit till the following year. We had anticipated it, it's built into 26-27 budget, but our levy went down because we'd got less, so the government share of the surplus was less. That became a surplus this year, but which is why we've got the surplus on the collection fund, but we're holding it in year, but we're holding it to next year because we know the accounting treatment of the deficit materialises in the next financial year.
I think we need more training on that, Matt. And I think we also need some of those bow ties for everybody. They're absolutely magnificent. Any other questions?
Yes, if I may. Couple of short ones. The recharges to HRA and to schools, which was noted as could not be made. What was the reason for that? And then also, there's an appendix A1, I think it is, which is the changes on the reserves. And I didn't understand that. It really doesn't help me a lot. It was one page which had in millions, needless to say, but it didn't really make any sense and it didn't reconcile to anything. I wondered if it was possible to produce a list of the earmarked reserves as at 31st of March 2026, so we could actually see that, how it ties up with the accounts.
To do the easy bit first, I will address the reserves and put it in a much better format. What we were trying to show here was we have the high differences in the actual body of report, which the 6.22, the negative 3.58 and the 9. But what we wanted to make sure, just for transparency, was that members actually saw all the different reserves that make it up. So when you see the accounts, actually, which is note 5, we only probably have about 10 lines. But in fact, we have sub-accounts into all of those lines, and so it's actually probably about 30, 35 accounts. So what we can do, I can put that in a much better. Can you just remind me where the comment on the recharges was? What number?
You can answer that later if you
I'll come back to that because I can't remember where I put it.
No, it was mentioned. There's one other thing.
Go on.
Okay, right.
I'm not going to... Not yet, anyway.
In the adjustments between month 10 and the outturn, there was extraordinary level of adjustments in the Chief Operating Officer's budget for the lack of use of flexible capital receipts. It ran into several million, well, lots of millions of pounds. Sorry, it was close to £1 million. Why and how come it was not recognised in month 10? Because I understand that the month 6 monitoring report indicated it had then been decided to restrict the amount of use of capital receipts.
So yes, you hit the point that it's all around the use of flexible capital receipts. We did 2 reviews during the year in terms of just looking at the policy and rechecking the policy. And in rechecking the policy, we were even tighter in terms of the use of those capital receipts. right at the end of the year as well. So we actually charged more to revenue and protected our capital receipts.
Okay, thanks, Pete. It just seemed that it all was in one area, one directorship, rather than kind of spread out, which one would have expected, but that's just the way things worked out.
Yeah, you're right. It really hits two areas, that and there's a little bit in the other central services as well, but that's where a lot of the spending actually takes place. So they facilitate the transformation in other areas, which is what you've got to use capital receipts properly.
Go on, we've still got time. Oh.
Anybody want to ask a question? No? Go on, Tony.
Okay, right. On the basis there was a change in the approach to transformation funding, should that have been referred to Audit Committee at that point, or maybe not?
No.
I suppose it wasn't really, it was just the fact that there was less money available.
Yeah.
So we will have to refer to it in statement of accounts.
Yeah, it's not here. Okay. Councillor Mothers.
Thank you, Chair. Section 2 talks about the mid-term financial plan needing 350k, and there'll obviously have been capital costs of Oracle and maybe other iterations of that. So these costs are due to the financial and governance improvements through various plans that have been presented and from external feedback and other reports. I guess it would be useful to understand as a whole, if not necessarily here now, but to members of this committee and myself, if you wouldn't mind, through you, Chair, how much was spent generally on the financial improvements, on the governance improvements in the last financial year? Because I think it would be useful to monitor these costs from year to year, just to make sure that, obviously, this is investment to save, it's an investment to improve, and so it would be useful to understand those costs.
Yeah, so maybe ask you a different way, Peter. So you've invested some money, invest to save, what's the return? Yeah. And are we up?
So we can get that information for you.
Yeah, I think it's something that maybe that goes to scrutiny later anyway. I think it's quite a good thing for us to know. If you've invested £1 million, have we made 4 million from it? I think to show you it's good bit of business. Anything else? No? Okay. Well, last one then. Item 13. Yeah, can we agree the recommendations, please? I do apologise because I haven't got my papers in front of me. I'm getting to say, we've agreed? Yes? Okay, fine. So we go to the last item, which is item 13. And who's that? Oh, Matthew. Oh, God, there you are. You're very big there, Matthew. Well, I also that's me. I can't see, but I can see the rest.
So you've got the details set out in the report in front of you. I mean, the kind of key challenges over the last year have been tackling homelessness in particular, which we've made some significant progress in stabilising the position, and we've strengthened the management resource in the service now, so we're making good progress on the 4 key work streams. And I think some of the key areas are set out in relation to waste and trees. I mean, the benchmarking shows some very positive results, particularly on waste collection and recycling, which is positive and confirms the investment the Cabinet are making in the services. and we continue to make progress in those key areas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Daniel, who's next? Do we go just around the table, Matthew?
Next up is Julie.
I'll just let them go one after another. It's a lot easier than coming back to you.
My laptop has died, but I should be able to...
Don't worry, I haven't got mine at all. So
having a look. There's lots of information there, but I suppose the main highlights around risks and challenges in children's is cost rather than volume in social care. So we don't have high volumes of children looked after, we don't have high volumes of child protection. We've been really quite successful about managing demand and meeting families' needs earlier, but for those children who do need statutory services and care, the cost of care has been a real issue for us. We have embarked on our projects for the last 3 years is about interrupting the market and building more internal sufficiency, and that doesn't happen overnight. So in the last year we have opened in December an additional 3 children's homes that are run by the council, controlled by the council, and more importantly deliver our care offer in the way we want to deliver care for our young people, which is the residential care, which is our highest cost, is an intervention. It's not a destination for our young people. We want our young people to be in family homes, either their own family, their extended family, or alternative foster families. And that links clearly with our fostering offer, which again we launched in 2024. Things don't happen overnight. The first year we increased by about 14 households, 16, 17 last year, but we're on track for 30 new households. So increasing the pipeline, because building beds, we can fill them, but actually it's about outcomes for children and they shouldn't be staying there, so we need families for them to move on to. So in social care, that's been the major pressure where our activity is. It's about early intervention and ensuring that we get the support right at the first time. The other side of it is very much the same stuff. We spoke about the DSG. We've had a really targeted transformation programme, started under the safety valve but has continued as our DSG recovery plan and our Ofsted improvement plan, and ensuring that we match the best value, lower cost, bringing the in-year deficit down along with still getting the best outcomes we can for that group of young people. And we have been, I think Pete said, successful in doing that to a point. Government announced new SEND reforms autumn last year that they were coming. That in itself has driven increased demand and requests because there's lots of anxiety in the system. So we are seeing an increase in volume in that area, not necessarily an increase in cost. Overall, it's costing more, but actually the individual unit costs and the placement costs are coming down. We're just having more children in there. So that is the tale of two halves that we're balancing across children. Across children's at the moment. We continue the information there. We benchmark really well. Last year we were the third lowest cost in London, with still an outstanding grading. So those who were lower cost than us did not have those quality outcomes that we want for our children. We inspected at the middle grade for our SEND. We are hoping when they come back that they will see that will increase. But happy to take any questions.
Questions? Yes.
It's interesting what you were saying about, if I've understood it, that it's not so much a rise in the number of children who need services, but it's the cost of whoever's there, as it were. Because in the recent past, there's been very public reports about the fact that there's a concern that it's too easy to claim that a child has got some sort of particular problem, and then the pathway to getting it, and then they create an enormous expense for local authorities, when perhaps in earlier times things would have been different. Are you not seeing a rise in numbers that's consistent with that sort of concern that's been in the public domain recently?
In children's social care, we are seeing a real decrease in numbers. What we are seeing is an increase in complexity. There's an increase in young people's mental health. which means finding alternative places for them to live where they can't live with their families is incredibly expensive on the market. But there are much less children coming into care. We've seen a huge rise in terms of EHCPs for children with SEND needs, and that is what the reforms is trying to tackle. And unintended consequences, I think, because we all go, legislation changes in the main for positive reasons, but unintended consequences is we ended up in a system where to get the support that a child needs, it was felt that they needed to have the EHCP, and that has driven cost and volume of them. It's going to take quite a culture shift, and that's not going to be fixed by the end of the year. This has probably taken us to 2030, but it's the private market costs, independent, non-maintained schools in the SEND space that drives that cost. But children's social care, for a child to go into residential provision, 4 years ago, a really high cost placement would be £5,000 a week. That would be an absolute delight if somebody asked me to sign that now. We get, I think our highest was £22,000 a week, and the young person still managed to get back from Wolverhampton to Uxbridge before I get back from Birmingham to Uxbridge. And it's those inflated costs of care, and it doesn't reflect the quality. So what we're trying to do is not just have our own provision or beds, but have a much better care order that gives us a care offer for our children.
I think just one very quick one, thank you. I think that one of the concerns that's been raised in this sort of debate in the recent past has been whether or not there's sufficiently robust measures when assessing need as to whether there really are the claims such as they are made, because a lot of there were people from different public authorities in this debate, and it did seem that there was a challenge around the way in which we deal with classify and award conditions which then cost, and in particular travel, of course, which is which has gone through the roof, as I understand it. Is that right?
I think that issue, I don't think really is around the assessment of the child's need. It's the matching the provision to meet the child's need, and the tribunal system. In the SEND system, 96% roughly of all outcomes go with parental preference, because parental preference is enshrined in legislation. And a very quick example, we had a complex young person who we could meet their needs for a package of around £60,000 a year, which is still relatively expensive. Family wanted something else, tribunal orders £500,000 a year placement, and we can appeal, and we have appealed the appeal, but their word goes. So that is some of the difficulty we have. So if we get to a point where we can meet young people's needs really early, identify them, don't require diagnosis and a piece of paper, but actually have their needs met, I think that's the direction of travel that we need to go in, and a lot more work with parents to understand we don't need to fight about it.
Thank you. Sandra, I've actually got a question for both of you afterwards, but I'll ask it now. We used to do very well with the voluntary sector, and it used to reduce our costs a hell of a lot more than we don't seem to be doing so much of it now. Can you guys explain to me why we're not doing it? Because it is one way of reducing costs quite quickly, because they can do it a lot cheaper than what we can.
Thank you, Chair. It's music to my ears to hear that you think that the voluntary sector do good work for us, because they really do. So our preventative offer, particularly in adults, but Julie can talk about the children's, is significant. It's really productive. It's in the background where it should be, but without it, I would have even more significant demand. Julie's just spoken about lower number or steady numbers of children, higher costs. I've got higher numbers of people and really higher costs. So we've got a real huge demand. It's in line with all of the data that suggests our ageing population and the demand and the mental health demands on adult social care. but our third sector, voluntary sector providers make such a difference. So if I just very quickly give you an example.
Sorry, Chair, may I just declare an interest, because I work in the voluntary sector as a pecuniary interest, so I might leave at this point and let you answer freely.
No, you can sit there and don't say anything. That's fine. Well, it's not going to. I don't think there's a. Yeah, well, exactly. So you can sit there or sit in the go. Okay, sorry, Sandra. Go on.
Hopefully it's all going to be positive that we're saying anyway. So the third sector make a huge difference to the support that we give our residents. So not everybody is eligible for social care. They may have a lower level of need, and we will want to redirect them to that support. The world's a very different place post-COVID for a lot of our residents, and in particular things we've talked about, the costs here a lot today, and debt advice and support, supporting people with low level mental health needs, supporting people, in particular our carers offer, which is really significant and really important. In Julie's area, she has a high level of autism support for younger people coming through that may not be eligible or may be on the cusp. That diversion to our third sector support will and does save the council a significant pressure on its budget, and without that support, not only that, it's so important for us to go down the route of early independence and preventing people from getting into services.
You know what my next question is going to be? Why are you not broadening that scope out to taking more? Because I mean, you know, as I mentioned in the beginning, what did I say? 6.1 million. 6.5 in social care, 8.3 in housing. So, you know, we're in financial EFS, so we really need to be looking at more positive ways of how can we reduce that, because if you go to a tribunal and they make you pay £500,000 instead of £60 million, there's not a lot we can do that. One is there insurance that we can take out to protect us on that. Well, obviously, Julie's saying no, so I won't ask her that question. But shouldn't we be looking to expand that area in the voluntary side to reduce the costs down in this other area?
So absolutely, we target all of our third sector support, our early intervention, and our integrated work with our health colleagues through our public health service. So the funding that we use to provide all of those services is really well targeted. We look at where we need it. It prevents people from needing that level of support that before their eligibility kicks in, at which point we've got a statutory duty, so we need to make that offer. But you can dovetail both of those services, so anything that we can do to offer the right level of support to people through the voluntary sector, we're doing.
So there's nothing else that we can do?
We can build on that, and certainly grants to do that.
As Tony's an accountant, I'm a businessman, so I look at the ways of, okay, so how do we strip down and rebuild?
Yeah.
How do we look at new avenues outside of the box to do that? Are we doing that work? That's what we want to know.
We absolutely are, and
okay.
From commissioned care, so working with lead providers, working to maintain a good marketplace, a low level cost, to setting up our own care company, to reducing the cost of care placements every week. So it's really front and centre of everything we're doing at the moment for two reasons, as I said. One, around preventing escalating need, keeping people independent, and two, managing the budget.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, sorry, I hadn't realised that we're dealing with each one and the questions for each. So, can I ask Dan a question on... it talks about in the report on fly tipping that one needs to have a more nuanced understanding is essential. Can you explain what that means and how we compare? Because on the face of it, the figures which we have of enforcement action is a very low number.
Of course, through you, Chair. The figures that we do have available in everyday language, we understand them to be reported differently by different local authorities. So it is difficult to draw a fair and equal comparison. What I can say is that we're doing some proactive work in respect of fly tipping. And obviously we need to understand that fly tipping, it almost has a sort of gradient really of a sort of black bag that's left by a litter bin right up to a commercial fly tip. And so we're taking a very proactive approach with particularly criminal fly tipping, with CCTV cameras, patrols, hotspots, and also importantly making sure that we respond very quickly to clear fly tips when they're reported to us, so that residents don't have to endure the fly tip. So from our point of view, we've got an action plan in place. It's led by one of the directors. And we have campaign days, action days, and proactive monitoring with our CCTV control room. And we, as I'm sure you've heard the Cabinet member say, we will not stop till we find the perpetrators, and we will attempt to seize their vehicles and remove those vehicles from future fly tipping.
I'm going to jump in just a sec. Bins. Obviously hot weather, filled up a lot quicker. I think I've reported my 5 bins in Northwood on a constant basis now. I'm getting a bit thinking about you've removed some main bins, and now people are using the dog bins for putting rubbish in. What is the what is the next step, as it were, to sort of resolve this issue really? And it's especially because it's around the school. I get a lot, obviously kids are using it, and
You're absolutely right. So we get a sort of we experience a seasonal use of bins, seasonally high. So particularly this time of the year, and as we approach the school holidays, I can predict with absolute certainty which parks will, they're enjoyed by families and visitors, but not everyone takes their takeaway pizza and so on. So we know which parks. So we put in early doors crews to clear. And actually we have been in discussion about how we can put in place bigger bins for a short period of time where practically we can do that. But its frequency, just to add, obviously members will be aware that we're piloting Love Clean Streets. What we have done working with Matthew's team is, and it sounds a bit geeky, but we've put a GIS code on each bin, so that if we get complaints about particular bins, particular parks, particular locations, then we know actually we need to change our rota and step up our actions and actually adjust resources where we get lower demand. So we're being very agile where we can be.
So I expect them to be cleaned quicker then, yeah? I'll go on the way home, I'll have a look. Yes, Tony, you wanted to ask another question?
Yeah, thanks. Just a general thought, it will be really, although we've got benchmarking, as you mentioned, on lots of the statistics, I think it'd be really helpful, rather than just doing it on national or London, to try and do it on statistical neighbours, which is the basis on which schools, for example, try to benchmark. It really makes a lot more sense, and we can really then understand where we need to focus on improvements. On one thing, crime. I don't know whether we've got on to crime, have we?
Not yet. I don't think that's not here, is it?
The overall number of crimes.
We'll get Mr. Khan in. He might be able to help us on this one.
A number of crimes doesn't seem to be particularly helpful, I don't think, because it includes presumably motoring and littering.
Yeah.
And it's really the serious crimes which I would have thought it would be really useful to be able to compare how our authority.
Yeah, I think we should take that with the Commissioner, really, because it's actually useless. But anyway, let's move on. Any other questions? No?
Yeah.
One more?
Yeah.
Go on.
There's no reference in the reports to road safety, and I was a bit surprised by that. There is about potholes and things like that, but when it comes to road safety and accidents and injuries, I think it would be helpful to actually have that as part of the performance.
We can take that away, Chair.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Right. That's it. Is that it? You want to say something? No? Sorry, you have to agree to recommendations. Do you agree to recommendations? Right. Oh, it's the forward plan. But we've already sort of sorted that out, haven't we? You want to look at any issues on the forward plan? Go on then, quickly. Rogers is playing. Should have been Eze, but never mind. Don't worry, so why don't you email me and I'll, if you haven't got... There you go, we'll wait for the next meeting. Item 15, work programme update, independent chair recruitment. Yes, you need to speak about that, Anisha.
Yeah, just very briefly. So the recruitment campaign for the independent chair is live. It's going to close on the 31st of July, and following that, shortlisting will then take place. And we're looking to arrange an additional meeting early September, probably the week commencing 7th of September, to hold interviews. But I'll be in touch regarding that.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
And as I said earlier, if there's something, little things you want to do till we get the proper chairman in, drop either me or Anisha a line and we will have a deep dive. I mean, I'd like to get more into your voluntary area, really. I just think we need to look at that. But I'll bring this meeting to a close. Thank you very much, and come on England, I'll say.